My parents spent my entire childhood investing in one person, my sister, the golden child. They paid for her school, her apartment, her business. They even took the money meant for my college and gave it to her instead. Because they believed one thing: she's the future of this family. For years, they told me the same sentence: you're the safe option. But when her company collapsed and millions of dollars disappeared, the same parents who ignored me for years suddenly showed up at my office, begging for help. In my family, there was never equality. There was allocation. Resources flowed toward Olivia. Everything else flowed away from me. Olivia was 2 years older than me and had always been the center of gravity in our house. She was charismatic, beautiful, the kind of person who could walk into a room and make strangers feel like they were lucky she noticed them. My parents adored that. They called it leadership. Teachers called it confidence. I eventually learned another word for it: entitlement. Meanwhile, I was the quiet one. Not antisocial, not shy, just independent. I liked building things, fixing computers, solving problems. Those weren't talents my parents valued. They liked things that looked impressive: networking, public speaking, entrepreneurship. And Olivia was perfect for that image. So over time, the family developed an unspoken structure. Olivia received investment. I received expectations. The first clear example happened when Olivia turned 18. My parents bought her a car. Not a used car. A brand new luxury SUV, the kind most families save years to afford. That same year, my laptop broke. I asked my father if I could replace it for school. He sighed like I had asked something unreasonable. Money is tight right now. I remember staring at the SUV in the driveway that night, trying to understand how both things could be true. Eventually, I realized something simple. Money wasn't tight. Priority was. The moment that changed everything happened 3 years later. I had been accepted into a top university for computer science. Scholarships covered a portion of tuition, but I still needed the college fund my parents had promised since childhood. When I brought it up, the room became strangely quiet. My father rubbed his temples. My mother looked uncomfortable. And then Olivia said something casually that I will never forget. "Oh, I thought you knew." "Knew what?" "The college fund went into my startup." Olivia had decided to start a lifestyle brand: luxury athleisure clothing, social media influencers, premium brand identity. My parents were ecstatic. "She's building something big," my father said proudly. "The market is huge," my mother added. The college fund, my college fund, had been used as the first investment. I remember asking a simple question: what happens if the company fails? My father laughed. "That won't happen." For the next few years, Olivia lived like a startup celebrity. Expensive photo shoots, brand launches, networking parties, investor meetings. My parents financed everything: office space, marketing campaigns, staff salaries, even Olivia's apartment in the city. Every dollar they had went toward her company. And for a while, it looked like the gamble was working. Olivia's brand exploded online. Influencers posted about it. Celebrities wore the clothing. Magazine articles described her as a young visionary entrepreneur. My parents loved every second of it. Family gatherings turned into Olivia presentations. "She's already worth millions." "She'll sell the company in 5 years." "She's going to change this family forever." Meanwhile, I built my life quietly: scholarships, freelance coding, then eventually my own small tech consulting company. But no one asked about that, because compared to Olivia's glamorous brand, my work looked boring. The truth revealed itself accidentally. 5 years after Olivia launched the company, I looked at a financial document during a family dinner. It was sitting on the table next to her laptop. At first, I didn't mean to read it, but the numbers caught my attention immediately. Revenue looked impressive, but profits were negative. Massively negative. The company wasn't making money, it was burning it. Olivia's brand survived entirely on investor funding. Each year, new investors came in. Each year, the company spent more money. But the actual business wasn't profitable, which meant the entire empire was built on a dangerous assumption that investors would always keep believing. And then one day, they stopped. The first investor pulled out, then the second, and suddenly the Golden Child's empire began collapsing faster than anyone expected. The financial document I saw that night changed everything. It wasn't meant for me. Olivia had been showing it to my parents during dinner, explaining something about growth projections. My parents looked impressed. They didn't understand financial statements. They understood confidence, and Olivia had always been good at that. But I studied numbers for a living. So when I glanced at the report, something immediately felt wrong. Revenue looked large, huge even, but the expenses. The expenses were terrifying. Marketing budgets bigger than sales, production costs climbing every quarter, investor funding filling the gaps. The company wasn't profitable, not even close. It was surviving entirely on new money. Later that night, I recreated the financial model in my own spreadsheet. Within an hour, the truth became obvious. Olivia's company was losing millions every year. The only reason it looked successful was because investors kept funding the losses. It was the startup version of a magic trick. As long as new investors appeared, the illusion continued. But if funding stopped, everything would collapse instantly. I tried explaining this to my father once. He waved it off immediately. "You don't understand venture capital." I actually did understand it. But that wasn't the point. The point was that my parents had emotionally invested in Olivia's success, which meant evidence didn't matter anymore. To them, Olivia wasn't just a daughter. She was a symbol. Proof that their parenting had produced something extraordinary. And symbols are dangerous things, because people protect them long after the reality disappears. For the next 2 years, Olivia lived like a celebrity founder. She appeared in business magazines, spoke at startup conferences, posted photos from luxury hotels. Investors continued funding her brand. Every new round of financing made my parents more confident. "See?" my mother would say. "She's unstoppable." Meanwhile, my own company kept growing quietly, not explosively, but steadily. Corporate software contracts, regional clients, then international ones. Within a few years, my small consulting business had become a full technology firm. But the family barely noticed, because Olivia's life was louder. The first real crack appeared during Olivia's 7th year in business. One of her suppliers contacted me, not intentionally. They had mistaken my email address for Olivia's company account. The message was short, but it contained something shocking. They were asking about overdue payments worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. That was strange, because Olivia had just announced a major investor round. She should have had more money than ever. So I started digging, and what I discovered made my stomach drop. Olivia had been manipulating revenue numbers, inflating sales reports to impress investors, delaying supplier payments to hide losses, and quietly moving money between accounts to make the company appear stable. In other words, her empire wasn't just fragile, it was fraudulent. Fraud in startups spreads like fire. Once one investor starts asking questions, everyone else follows. Within months, Olivia's investors demanded a full financial audit. That's when everything collapsed. The numbers didn't match the reports. The projections were unrealistic. The debts were massive. And suddenly, the golden child genius didn't look so brilliant anymore. The real disaster came from the loans, because Olivia hadn't just used investor money. She had taken massive credit lines, business loans, supplier financing, and worst of all, personal guarantees, guaranteed by my parents, which meant when the company failed, the banks came after them. My mother called me at 2 in the morning. Her voice sounded completely different, fragile, scared. "Your sister's company is in trouble." I sat up in bed immediately. "What kind of trouble?" Silence. Then my father took the phone. "We're facing serious financial exposure." That sentence was his polite way of saying something simple. They were losing everything. Within 6 months, Olivia's company shut down completely. Investors sued. Suppliers demanded payment. Banks froze accounts. The brand that had once appeared unstoppable disappeared almost overnight. But the debts remained. Millions of dollars. And my parents were responsible for them. The same parents who had taken my college fund to invest in Olivia were now drowning in debt because of her. And suddenly, they realized something. I was the only person in the family who wasn't broke. What he read was not a rescue plan. It was a contract. A very specific one. The first page outlined the total debt, investor lawsuits, supplier obligations, business loans personally guaranteed by my parents. The number was exactly the same number the banks had demanded. Except now, the creditor's name was different. Mine. My father turned the page slowly. "What is this?" he asked. "Terms," I said. Olivia leaned forward slightly. Her eyes moved quickly over the document. Then she froze. Because she saw the first condition. Asset transfer. My parents' house, their retirement investment account, and the remaining company assets from Olivia's business. All of it listed as collateral. "This is ridiculous," Olivia said immediately. "You can't expect us to sign this." I didn't respond. Instead, I looked at my father. Because this part wasn't about Olivia. It never had been. It was about the choices my parents had made for 20 years. My father kept reading. Every page made the structure clearer. The debt would not be forgiven, but it could be managed. Payments reduced. Interest controlled. Legal action paused. But only under one condition. Control of the family assets would transfer to me, completely. "You're taking everything," Olivia said. "No," I replied calmly. "I'm protecting it." My mother finally spoke. "Protecting it from what?" "From you." The room went silent. Because for the first time, someone had said the truth out loud. For years, every financial decision in our family had flowed toward Olivia. Cars, apartments, startup funding, marketing budgets, investor presentations. Every dollar spent to maintain the illusion that she was the future. And now the future had arrived. It looked like millions in debt. My father removed his glasses slowly. "You're punishing us." "No," I said. "I'm restructuring risk." That answer felt cold, but it was also accurate. Because if the bank still owned the debt, my parents would lose everything within months. The house, the retirement fund, every asset they had. What I offered was survival, just not the version they expected. Olivia pushed the papers back across the table. "I'm not signing this." I nodded. "That's fine." My father looked confused. "What do you mean that's fine?" "It means the banks resume collection." My mother whispered softly. "They'll take the house." "Yes." "And the lawsuits?" Yes. And the debt? Yes. Because without the restructuring, the legal process would be simple: liquidation, asset seizure, public bankruptcy. My father looked down at the contract again. For the first time in years, he wasn't looking at Olivia. He was looking at me, carefully, trying to understand something. You planned this, he said quietly. No, I replied. You did. The room stayed quiet, because the truth was finally visible. 20 years of decisions, 20 years of investments, 20 years of believing one child was the future and the other was simply the backup plan. Now the math had changed. My father signed first. The pen moved slowly across the page. Then he passed the contract to my mother. She hesitated, but only for a moment, because she understood something my sister still didn't. This wasn't revenge. It was gravity. Decisions eventually become outcomes. Olivia was the last to speak. You're enjoying this, she said. I thought about that for a moment. Then I shook my head. No. And that was the truth. Because this wasn't satisfaction, it was correction. For years, my parents had believed one story: that Olivia was the investment, and I was the safe option, the quiet one, the reliable one, the person who would always be there to stabilize whatever collapsed. They were right about that part. But they misunderstood one thing: safe doesn't mean invisible, and reliable doesn't mean powerless. 3 months later, the changes became visible. The house remained in the family, but legally it belonged to the trust I controlled. The remaining assets from Olivia's company were liquidated. The debts were stabilized. The lawsuits paused. My parents kept their home, but they no longer controlled the finances. Olivia moved into a small apartment downtown. No investors, no magazine interviews, no startup conferences, just a job. A normal one, for the first time in her life. One afternoon, months later, my father visited my office again. Not to ask for help, just to talk. He looked older, quieter. I made a mistake, he said. I didn't answer, because some truths don't need a response. We thought Olivia was the future, he continued. And you? I finally looked up from my desk. You thought I was the safety net. He nodded slowly. Yes. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then he asked one final question. Was this revenge? I considered that carefully. Then I answered honestly. No. What was it then? I closed the folder on my desk. It was accounting. Because in the end, I didn't destroy the golden child. I simply bought the debt that her brilliance had created. And once I owned the numbers, the story finally balanced itself. Interest reductions, extended repayment timelines, asset protection clauses. It was far better than anything the banks had offered. But there was one condition. Olivia looked up first, her voice barely above a whisper. You want me to work for you? I nodded, not as punishment, as repayment. Her marketing skills were real, her creativity was real, her arrogance had simply been protected too long. Now she would use those skills somewhere they actually mattered. My company. My mother looked uncomfortable. This feels humiliating. I shrugged slightly. Debt usually is. My father closed the folder slowly. He understood something important. This was the only way they survived financially. And more importantly, it was the only way the family could continue. Olivia arrived at my office 2 weeks later. No luxury car, no designer entourage, just a laptop and a quiet expression. For years, she had been treated like a visionary. Now she was an employee. The adjustment wasn't easy. But over time, something surprising happened. She improved. Not instantly, not dramatically, but steadily. Because when someone finally faces consequences, they sometimes discover who they actually are. 3 years later, the debts were gone. My parents kept their house. The lawsuits were settled. My company doubled in size. And Olivia eventually became one of the most effective marketing directors in the business. Not because she was the golden child anymore, because she finally had to earn her place. For years, my parents believed my sister was the future of the family, but when her empire collapsed, the child they ignored was the one who rebuilt everything.